Hey guys, today I'm uploading my tips for round 4, and let's start off with Sydney versus Geelong down in the SCG. I think, well, both sides they have a great year. They came off a great victory. Just Sydney defeating North Melbourne all in the third quarter, kicking 11 goals to 1, and Geelong dominating the third quarter as well against Carlton on Saturday night, winning that quarter around about 30 points, and that clinched the victory. I think this will be a finals-like game. I think Sydney might just win this game. I think they've got talent in the midfield that's just better than the Cats in the forward and the defence. And I think they'll just win that by 7 points. Geelong, they will, as they always do, give them a big run for their money, but I think Sydney will just win that game. Next game is Hawthorn versus Fremantle. Hawthorn coming off a great victory against the Pies. Well, they did it all in the second half, really. The Pies just couldn't match them in the end, and Fremantle came off a good start against the Bombers, leading by 36 points at the end of the second quarter, but then they just fell to bits as they lost about 4 points in the end. Chris Mann could have won it for them, but just missing. But I do think Hawthorn have another great year. I think they'll win the premiership. They were a bit unlucky last year, but I think they'll win it this year and win this game by 26 points. Fremantle, they will hold them up a bit, but I just think they will just lose that game. Next game is what I think will be the match of the round, is Richmond versus Collingwood. I think Richmond will have an amazing year. They've had an amazing start to the year, having 3 wins, 0 losses. Collingwood, they came off a good first half against the Hawks. They just couldn't finish it off in the end. Even though Collingwood come off a big loss, I think they'll just win this game. It'll be a really interesting game. Richmond might lead at the end of the third quarter maybe, but I do think Collingwood will just win this. I think Richmond will make the top 4 this year, so Collingwood will be like a quarterfinals match, I think, and Collingwood will just win. Next game is St Kilda versus Essendon. Now, I've looked up the history between these two clubs. I think it hasn't been a while since St Kilda has bet Essendon. Essendon's had the wood over them for a while, and I think, well, now that Essendon's a better club than St Kilda, now they'll win by a pretty comfortable margin. Essendon coming back from behind against Fremantle, and I think they'll win this by 7 to 8 goals. I know St Kilda came off an impressive win, but it was all without a forward line when they versed GWS. Well, GWS had no forward line. When pretty much Patton got injured, it just was all downhill for them. And winning that by around about 90 points, but I do think Essendon will win this by around about 7-8 goals. Next game is West Coast versus Carlton. Carlton's fixture just gets harder and harder. Now they verse West Coast at Patterson's. I think West Coast will win this by around about 4 goals. Carlton, they have it when all their great players are not injury prone. They have a great team, but they've just got a lot of injuries. They've got Betts, Cruz has now got an injury. All their good players, they can have a great side, but they've just got a lot of injuries. When they have their full team, they really do great against the top sides like Sydney, Hawthorn, and Collingwood and stuff like that. But now they don't have it. I think West Coast will win this by 4 goals. Next game is Gold Coast vs Port Adelaide. Gold Coast just losing against the Lions. Even though Lions won, that was not impressive. I think Gold Coast really gave them a run for their money. And Port Adelaide is the team they verse. Adelaide hasn't been shining up for the Suns lately, and I don't think he'll play that great against the Power. I think Port Adelaide, if they keep Adelaide a bit quiet, they will definitely win that game. Port Adelaide have a lot of young kids like Jake Need and Oliver Wines that first year players, but they are playing great in the first year, and I think Port will win this round about 4 goals. Next game is, I think, whoever loses this will finish on the bottom of the ladder. Melbourne vs GWS. GWS, as I said earlier, have lost their main forward, Jonathan Patton, by an ACL injury, so that's a really big blow. Even though Melbourne's been playing terrible these last 3 weeks, I think they'll notch up the first win by around about 4 goals against GWS, and they'll be really happy about that. The next game is Adelaide versus the Western Bulldogs. Western Bulldogs are a struggling side. They're a rebuilding side, and I think Adelaide, they won't have a great year this year, might just scrape into the A, but I do think they'll win that by around about 5 goals, Adelaide. And I think Tex Walker will have a big game. Rory Sloane will play great. Dangerfield will just outrun all the Dogs players, and they'll have a great win. And the last game in the round is North Melbourne versus Brisbane. Brisbane, they did beat Gold Coast, but it was not impressive, and I think North Melbourne, well, they can do great against good sides. They always give a good fight, but they just lose in the end. But I do think they'll win this round about 7 to 8 goals. Thank you for watching this video, guys. Stay tuned for my ladder predictions for the end of round 4, and stay tuned, guys. See ya.